Hi, everyone. It's Helen from SMB Deal Hunter. Today we have Kriss Berg, aka the car wash guy, with us. Kriss is the owner of an e-commerce business as well as multiple car wash locations. Kriss, it is great to have you today. Excited to learn more about your story.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks for having me on.
Well, let's get started, Kriss. What's your background, and how did you get into buying car washes, and before that, I guess, into e-commerce?
Yeah, I've done a lot of different things I started off with a construction business and parlayed that into a solar business where I was selling solar power kits online. And that eventually led me to selling supplements online. I really liked the online business model because you could do it from anywhere, as you know.
Yep.
And that generated some profits that I was kind of looking to invest a few years ago. And if you were active at all on Twitter in 2020 or 2021, you saw everybody was investing in storage deals. And so I looked at storage deals for a while, and the asset prices were so high that it didn't make any sense. There was no way you were going to make money buying these places at these prices. And in the process, I found a real estate agent, and he said, "You should look at this car wash. I think it makes better money than a storage facility, and it's been on the market for a while. Nobody really knows what to do with it." So my partner and I looked at it, and it didn't have a Google listing. It didn't, I mean, a Google Maps listing. If you looked for this place on the internet, it didn't exist. And it was just basically neglected by the owners. And so we bought it for 650K, and we were essentially able to almost double the business in about 6 months' time, just essentially basically marketing it, bringing up the rates to market rate, improving the customer experience, focusing on getting 5-star Google reviews. And that was it. So we bought another one that same year, did the same thing. We raised that income about 20%. We bought another one. We bought number 3 in December of last year, and now we're under contract for 2 more. So we're hoping to roll up about 20 of them, maybe 30 of them in the next 10 years or so, and create like a regional chain of them.
That's awesome. That's very cool. No, that's a super interesting background on how you got into it. What is your role in your e-commerce business look like now? How are you, splitting your time between e-commerce and
Yeah,
car washes?
that's a good question. The e-commerce business now, that will do about 8 million this year, maybe 9. But we've really scaled back our ad buying on that business. It was very difficult to buy traffic profitably off Facebook and YouTube, so we stopped doing that. Now we're just using affiliate traffic, which basically guarantees us profit. And we do a lot of email marketing, and so we'll probably profit about 25% out of that business. But it only takes me 20 hours a week, my partner maybe closer to 30. And then the car washes are about the same. It's about 20 hours a week, just because we have 2 more car washes under contract now. We're in due diligence, so that's a busy time. But normally when the car washes are just sort of static, they're running. We've done our integration for the first 60 days of spinning up our processes. After that, a typical car wash takes me less than 4 or 5 hours a week. Now that we'll have 5 of them, I would guess it'd be somewhere around 10 hours a week for me.
It seems like great time leverage. I love that. I guess.
And I love that too. That's a big deal for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. I guess you mentioned, you were running this e-commerce business. Why not buy more e-commerce businesses? Why kind of go into car washes? Were you familiar with the
Yeah,
space?
that's a really good question. We tried to do that for years. We looked at other e-commerce businesses, and we realized that so many of them were really fragile. They were dependent on Facebook, or they were dependent on Amazon, or they were dependent on Google search engine rankings. And if any one of those things, most of those businesses only had one of those things.
Yeah.
And if that went away, that there was no business left over. That business was effectively defunct. And it was just too risky. And for many years, as you know, especially 2020 through 2022, the asset prices of those businesses skyrocketed. You would have thought that they were a sure thing profit makers because there was all these roll-ups targeting them. They were paying 5 and 6 times earnings when I thought a lot of them were worth maybe 1 or 2 times earnings because they were so fragile. Especially the Amazon brands. I thought that was insane that they were
Yeah.
being rolled up for 5 or 6 times profit. So we just could not find an e-commerce business that we really liked that A, wasn't fragile, or B, we couldn't start ourselves because we had over 10 years of experience in e-commerce, and every business we looked at, like with a focused effort, we could start a competitor to that business in 60 days. And so sometimes we did that. We started a hearing aid brand. We started a sports nutrition brand. We started an outdoor survival gear brand, and those did well. They never really took off, but we were really, really glad that we didn't pay 3, 4, 5 times earnings for somebody else's business because we started it very easily.
No, I completely agree there. And I think e-commerce has gotten more volatile than ever. And I
Yeah,
think it's been really tough for a lot of operators to make that work. And I mean,
yeah.
it's crazy that you guys are seeing such strong margins there. That's a great
I know.
success.
That's why we're kind of like, don't mess with it, because this is as profitable as it's ever been. And it's one of those, it's like this tea kettle sitting on the top of a stick. You're like, don't touch it. Just leave it alone. Let it stay up there. Let it make the money. And I know a lot of people in e-commerce are down 40, 50%. We're down 50% from our high in 2021. And the fact that we're making money and not having to work so hard at it, I've taken as a sign to just let it ride for now. There will come a time when I have to pour a bunch more energy into it. There's no question about that. I'm happy to do that. But for now, I'm just happy to let it go on cruise control.
No, it makes sense. And I guess, a lot of people I'm sure very interested in the car wash space.
Yeah.
Where are you finding these car wash deals, or where'd you find your sort of your first couple deals there? And
Yeah, the first one was what the broker called a pocket deal. So it was technically on the market, but hadn't listed it anywhere because he had it listed for almost a year and never got a deal done. So he took it off kind of the listing services. You can find them on LoopNet or Crex. I prefer Crexi, CREXI.com, commercial real estate exchange. And almost all of them have been listed after that one. We found that off-market deals are very difficult because either A, the seller has an insane price in mind, or B, they have zero motivation to sell, or C, it's a trash business. It doesn't make money and they're completely neglected it and it needs all this work. It's probably a tear down a lot of times. And a lot of times it's a combination of all three of those things. So the listed businesses, you got to kind of comb through them to find a good car wash deal. But for us, that's been a great generator of deals.
that's great advice. And I hadn't heard of Crexy, so I'll have to feature that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, LoopNet, I think, is part of the CoStar network. So Trexi's off on its own. We find that for whatever reason, car wash sellers prefer Crexy. I'm not really sure why, but we find way more deals there than LoopNet. It's not totally clear why, but it's the
It's
case.
super interesting. Oh, good to know. I guess what initially attracted you to car washes, and why do you sort of continue to remain, bullish on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was looking for a side gig for a long time, and I looked at buying e-commerce deals and FBA companies and stuff like that, and it all felt so fragile, like I mentioned before, that I decided that real estate was kind of the move. There's a lot of tax advantages. If you really dig into the tax code, it was written by people who were investing in real estate. There's just no other way to put it, because the loopholes for real estate investments are legion. There's big ones, there's little ones, and they're not even really loopholes. They're actually hard coded into the tax code to give breaks for real estate investors. And so I started looking around, like I mentioned, self-storage deals, but the car wash was attractive because, first of all, there weren't a lot of buyers for these deals. Because it straddles this weird world between real estate and small business. It's actually both. So the real estate investors hate it because they walk into this equipment room and there's all these pumps turning on, there's all these chemicals, there's customers in and out all day. It's not passive, and a good real estate investor can look at that and notice that right away. Whereas a small business owner looks at it and says, why am I paying 10 times earning for this business? Well, it's because there's real estate involved. So for us, it's like the perfect Venn diagram of those two things. And I didn't realize this until after I had bought two of them. But the tax code is actually super preferential for car washes, because you can actually bonus depreciate everything involved with the car wash, including the building. If you're familiar with bonus depreciation, you're probably familiar with the term cost segregation analysis, where you buy a building and then you have to get an engineer to come in and figure out what's eligible for bonus depreciation. It's generally any equipment that has less than a 15-year life. So if you bought an apartment building, that would be the HVAC system, that would be parts of the electrical system, parts of the plumbing, but not the building itself. So the vast majority of an apartment building, you cannot bonus depreciate. Whereas the car wash, everything but the dirt itself, everything but the lot itself is depreciable. So that's one reason why you're seeing all these car washes being built, is because there's massive tax advantages for car wash owners. So we target car washes that don't compete with all these car washes that are being built. We're targeting self-serve and touch-free car washes, and those are actually disappearing more than they're being built, because they're generally on favorable real estate. Sometimes they're on very busy corners. Somebody wants to put Chick-fil-A up or something. So our competition is actually disappearing slowly. There's probably 50% of the population that either can't or won't go through one of the big tunnel washes that are being built. The tunnel washes are where you pull in and the conveyor belt moves you through this long tunnel. We don't compete with those because frankly, they're being overbuilt. There's just too many of them right now. There's a couple in my town that I think are going to do very poorly because they're in bad neighborhoods, bad locations, and there's just too many of them. So we're targeting a very different class of customer.
That's super interesting. I mean, I wasn't aware of all these massive tax advantages. So
Yeah.
I can see why you say on Twitter that you pay almost no income tax. So
Yeah, this year I'll get a refund. Last year I paid nothing. And if we get these two car washes I have under contract done, I will have a low 7-figure income and I will owe nothing to both state and federal. So it's a pretty cool hack. I actually feel guilty about not paying any tax, but I'm still paying gas tax, so I still use the roads. I'm still paying a lot in property tax, and we use it as schools. It's not like we're paying zero tax; it's zero income tax.
yeah.
So we end up dropping off a lot of big checks every December to our local homeless shelter, our local dog shelter, Boys and Girls Club. We're huge supporters of, so we give it our own way, but it's still a huge hack because most entrepreneurs, their number one expense is taxes.
Yep. No, it's genius, especially for folks that already run a business that is profitable, like in your case with your e-commerce business. And I think a lot of folks could benefit from a hack like this. So
yeah, that's why I started talking about this on Twitter, I actually talked about e-commerce for like 10 years on Twitter. Nobody cared.
You're ahead
I
of your
had like,
time.
yeah, no, nobody cared. I literally had like 900 followers, and I would do a post on my e-commerce business and I'd get like 2 likes, you know. And so I started talking about car washes and the tax advantages, and it just blew up. So I'm now the car wash guy, quote unquote, on Twitter. And I have up to 26,000 followers or something like that. And it's just blown up. I got so many questions about it, so many DMs, so many emails that I had to create a course. And your listeners can find that at taxfreecashcow.com. That's taxfreecashcow.com.
And I'll link
And I,
that as well.
yeah, link that please. And that is that gives you the whole game plan for finding, buying, and running a car wash for maximum tax benefit and maximum cash flow. So
Very
if you
cool.
want to learn more, just jump in there.
No, that's really cool. Thanks for doing that. I'm curious, with tell us about sort of like the different types of car washes that exist. You mentioned sort of like the big tunnel washes, which we've all gone through, which I loved as a
Yes.
kid.
Yeah.
Self-serve ones, like what are some of the main differences and why are you approaching sort of the self-serve ones versus the big tunnel ones?
Yeah, so you've got the tunnels, and they're also called express washes that are being built to death by PE, private equity. Those cost about 7 or 8 million bucks to build, and that can be exclusive of the land.
Wow.
So it's a massive capital outlay. Um, what the private equity guys do, they buy the land, build the car wash, and they do what's called a sale leaseback. So they sell the building and the land to an investor, take the proceeds from that, and then they go build another one. So it's a tax efficient way and a cost efficient way to roll up these things. That's another reason why so many are being built. The ones that we target are generally, I think everybody has one in their town, and it looks like a dump. It looks like a great place to get mugged a lot of times. Trash cans are overflowing, the paint's peeling. You're like, I think my car would be dirtier if I pulled into that thing after I pull out, right? So we target these ones and we really dress them up. They've got self-serve bays. There's a lot of people that love to wash their own car. It's a point of pride for them. It's a ritual. It's a way to get out of the house, get away from their kids a lot of times. And a lot of them have vehicles that just can't go through a tunnel, right? They have a truck that's got a bunch of stuff in the back of it. If they're a contractor, they're pulling a trailer with an ATV on it. They have an RV that would never go through one of those things anyway. We live in Colorado where ski racks and bike racks are on every other car, so they can't go through a tunnel. So they can go through the self-serve bay, or they can go through our touch-free bay, where it has the big arm that swings around, that nothing ever touches your car but the water and the chemicals. And the touch-frees are there's a lot of people, including my mom and my business partner, who are religious that nothing ever touches their car because they went through a tunnel 10 years ago or 2 months ago, and they got scratched up. The
Yep.
the tunnel washes can scratch cars. It happens quite a bit. So they love the touch free. So those are the basic. There's kind of like three styles. You'll also see the touch frees at gas stations a lot of times. You'll say, "Do you want a car wash?" And you could add it on for $6 or something. Those car washes have a really bad reputation. And it's well earned because they're not maintained very well, because the gas station attendant is worried
Yeah.
about checking people out and giving people their cigarettes and their big gulp, not whether the car wash is working. So we don't really worry about the competition from the gas stations or the tunnels. It's a very different customer we serve.
And is the price point pretty different as well?
Yeah. So that's the other thing we're putting in membership programs. So if you go to a tunnel wash, the top end program is usually about $45, maybe 39. Then a middle program for a monthly unlimited washes is usually 35. And then the base program, where the car wash doesn't really do much to your car at all, is usually around 25. Our membership, the top end is $25, and actually ours is 22, and the middle middle of the road one is 18, and then you can get a car wash every day with our membership program for $14 a month. So we're also putting in membership programs to compete with that.
That's super interesting.
And obviously, if
And
you wash your own car, it could be like $3, you know.
yeah, so what's the benefit from between like washing your own car versus, at home versus going to one of these self-serve bays?
At home, your water will leave spots because it's got calcium and mineral deposits in it. So it's definitely going to leave spots unless you absolutely dry every inch of it. It also doesn't have the pressure, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of people, especially we have a lot of customers with ATVs and RVs, and you just need a big, powerful gun to blast that stuff off with. You also need the big brush that we have. And
You're just set up for it,
we're
basically.
just set up. You can come into our car wash, be in and out of there in 5 minutes and have a completely clean car, washing it yourself. Whereas at home, you got to get out the hose, you got to get out the stuff, you got to get out all the stuff, and then there's a big mess in your driveway afterwards, right? Well, you can leave the mess at our place and we'll clean it up.
Yeah. No, makes a ton of sense why there's so much demand. I guess I'm curious with, the types of car washes you guys are buying up. What do you guys look for when evaluating these opportunities?
We look for below market rates on the car washes. That's the two that we're buying now. Their rates are about 40% below market. We look for neglect in the bays where the equipment doesn't work. The chemicals are old. People want big fat suds. People want it's got to smell like bubble gum. It's got to look like, a rainbow and all this stuff. And that's what our stuff looks like when we're done reformatting and reworking a car wash. We also look for overflowing trash cans, just basic neglect, like the one we bought in December. Um, the lot was completely trashed. They just let trash blow everywhere, so there was just garbage everywhere. And people don't want to clean their vehicle at a dirty facility. It's
Yeah.
pretty simple, right? You don't, I don't. And so we just look for general neglect. There's a lot of owners out there that bought car washes in the late 90s and early 2000s that thought it was a passive investment and thought you just showed up and emptied the quarters once a week and maybe emptied the trash cans and maybe fill up the soap a little bit. And it's not that at all. You've got to have somebody working it. So we have attendants there almost every day during business hours. And those people have been easy enough to find because it's a fairly low stress job. It's fairly easy for most people. And it's kind of a fun job for a lot of people. So we've been able to find attendance, but we're actually like instead we're going the opposite direction that a lot of people are, where with AI and automation and offshoring, you see people sort of reducing their head count. We actually come in and we actually increase it a little bit because we notice that the more attendants are on site, the happier our customers are. And those attendants can sell our membership programs. Because if you just put up a bunch of signs, people won't sign up on their own.
Yeah.
So if you've got an attendant there, he's emptying the trash, and somebody says, "Hey, what's the deal with this membership?" He can explain it. He'll get a little commission for selling it. And a good attendant can pay for himself very, very quickly, very easily.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like a customer service sales, commission-based salesperson as well.
That's
All
really
in
what it
one.
is. Yeah. And a lot of people pull into a car wash and they just like don't know how to work anything. And, maybe it's their first time. So if an attendant's there and they can help them pick out the soap and use the brush and all this stuff, it's very beneficial. We get a lot of 5-star reviews thanks to our attendants.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned you're looking for below market rates. What are market rates right now for car washes as of April 2024? I should
So
note
like
that in case someone watches this interview 3 years from now, right?
right. So the self-serve rates are about $1 a minute market in most metros. You'll find in rural areas it can be way below that. We've seen as low as 25 cents a minute. And then for the automatic, you can charge about $10, $12, $14 for the 3 menu items. So when we bought this car wash we're buying now, it is $7, $8, $9. So we can raise those. You know, the top one will go from 9 to 14 eventually. So that's a 50% difference. And so even the people who are religious about going to that car wash, when they see that it's $14, it's $5 more. Well, the chemical is going to be a little bit better. The place is going to be cleaner. And if you don't want to pay $14 for your car wash, well, you sign up for our membership program. It's $22 a month. You can wash your car every day for less than it costs for 2 car washes. So that price increase, along with the membership, really works together well, nicely.
That makes a lot of sense. That seems like it would be an easy sell to someone like me. So
Yeah, yeah.
that makes
You just
sense.
ask somebody, do you wash your car more than twice a month? Hey, then you might as well get a membership. It's $22 a month.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What about, when you're looking at these deals, is there a certain amount that needs to be cash flowing for you to sort of be excited about it, like, or a certain location? Like, how do you evaluate
Yeah, now that
that?
we're about to lock down our fourth and fifth, we like to see revenues of at least $200,000 a year, which seems really low if you're used to buying e-commerce and stuff, right? You were talking about your business with 30 million, and my other business is 8 to 10 million. $200,000 a year, you think of what, like, why even bother with that, right? But it's when there's commercial real estate involved, you have this thing called the cap rate. So on car washes, general rule of thumb, it sells for a 10 cap. So that means that it's a 10x multiplier. So if its EBITDA is around, let's say if it was a $200,000 top line car wash, most of them have a 50% EBITDA margin, which means it would have $100,000 in EBITDA. And that 10 cap means that it would go for about $1 million. So we wanted to have at least $200,000 in revenue. Then we can get it to about a 50% EBITDA margin, and we're looking for that 10 cap range. Sometimes it's as low as a 9. We've bought some that were as high as a 12. So that's kind of the parameters we look for, but you can find them on the market. I mean, you can find them all day long that have a 6 cap or a 7 cap. That's a 15x multiplier, okay?
Yeah.
Because you're taking 1 divided by 0.06 or 0.07. That is a 15x multiplier. You can't make that math work. So I would leave those alone. Look for that 10x multiplier somewhere in that range. And you can buy them that are doing, especially if you have a neighborhood one that has, say, like $50,000 to $100,000 in revenue. You can buy those, and then usually those are the ones with the biggest return because they're not on Google Maps. They don't take credit cards. Half the bays are closed half the time. You come in there and you really revamp it. You put in the credit card readers. You start getting some 5-star reviews on Google. You do a little bit of advertising, do some banners, improve the signage and lighting. You could double, even triple those businesses. And then your return is huge for those.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And the goal for you is, I guess where did they kind of max out? You're saying a lot of them are doing maybe 200K top line. Do you see them sort of max out a certain, is that
Yeah, I mean, they go up to the one I want to buy in my neighborhood does 800,000 in top line. And so it will do 400, 450 in EBITDA.
wow.
The big tunnels, they can do 3 or 4 million because they can process 500 or 600 cars a day. That's their advantage. And you can still, I know I just talked to a guy 2 weeks ago who buys neglected tunnels in Chicago, and he finds they're not being built like they are in a lot of the rest of the country. The private equity guys really focused on the Sun Belt, Texas, Florida, California, Arizona. And so in Chicago, they're not being built like crazy. So he's finding neglected tunnels, reworking the equipment, and he can cash flow $1 million, $1.5 million out of his tunnels. You got to have a really good system in place for that because there's a ton of mechanicals.
Yeah.
On a tunnel, if one thing breaks, your car washes down because it's a
Wow.
conveyor, right? In mine, I throw some cones in one bay and you just use the other bays.
Yeah.
So it's much simpler operationally.
That makes sense. No, that's super interesting. And I guess because of the size, I guess that makes sense that you're looking to roll up a bunch of these over the next 10 years. And I think it especially makes
Yeah,
sense, I guess, if you already run another business and take advantage of those tax incentives. So
yeah,
um,
definitely.
that's super interesting. I guess, and what percent of these folks, do you think at some sort of scale, or once your membership program is up and running, what percent of your revenue do you think is going to be from those memberships?
We just started the membership thing in November of 23. It's now April. We have 120 or 130 members. Um, it's probably less than 5% now. I would say 10 years from now, I bet it'll be 30 to 40% of our income.
That's very solid.
It's just something that's going to happen I mean, almost every business model is going this direction, right? Everybody
Yeah.
wants monthly recurring revenue. Everybody wants somebody on some sort of recurring billing. So we're just trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah. I guess going back to the first car wash you bought, what did that look like taking it over? What was your first day like, your first month? Were you kind of working there day to day, or did it
No,
already have?
luckily, this is another thing to look for is it's somebody who can work on site. It's somebody who can take over the day-to-day refilling the chemicals and, fixing the little pump problem, resetting the breaker or whatever. Um, if you're going to do it all yourself, obviously that can be a time commitment. But luckily, the first one we bought had an employee who had been there for 12 years,
Wow.
knew where the bodies were buried, knew everything and how to do everything. And he can do 95% of the tasks that need to do that. So he really hooked us up for all the subsequent car washes because he could tell us what to look for and all that stuff. So that was a big advantage. But we showed up the first day, we raised the prices because that hadn't been done in 12 years since because the guy who worked there, that was the one thing he didn't know how to do was change the pricing. So we cracked into the computer and we figured it out. We raised the prices day one. And then we really taught him how to treat customers because the previous owners were like, if the customers are screwing around or they're not washing their car fast enough or they're listening to the radio too loud or they would run them off or they're leaving too much mud in the bay, they would tell them to leave. And our philosophy is as long as you're here spending money and you're not keeping somebody else from washing their car, dirty up the bay. I don't care. We'll take care of the mud. Just keep plugging the quarters of the credit card into the machine, right? I don't
Yeah.
care, because we'll get people to show up and spend $50 to wash down a backhoe or something that's full of mud, and then the bay will just be trashed, but my guy can get in there in 5 minutes and be clean. So we completely changed how they dealt with the customers. So that 5-star reviews jumped up, and it became this community hangout instead of this, where the mean old man used to work, hey, watch out, don't piss him off. Now people pull up, they play music and they get with their family, they got the kids running around, and they're vacuuming, and then they wash the car, it's kind of a vibe. That's what we're looking for.
No, it's great. It sounds like they're that first sort of like manager, if you will, is pretty important to have. How do you guys
Yeah.
keep him incentivized to stay on? And he's been there 12 years already, but
Right. Well, he's kind of committed to the place, but we give them bonuses. We give them bonuses for selling the membership program. We give them bonuses just in general. When we get 5-star reviews, they get $10 bonuses. When we have a good month, they get bonuses. So we really incentivize them. We gave them a raise right out of the gate because we were asking them to do a lot more when we came on because we had no idea what we were doing. So we just treat him with respect. We listen to his ideas. We implement his good ideas. We do a biweekly breakfast with all the guys. We listen to what's going on with the car washes, the mechanics and stuff, and then what can we do to improve? What can we do to improve the customer experience and make their jobs easier? And it's basically treating them with respect and then giving them cash money. Everybody likes that. It's
yeah.
pretty simple.
Oh, that makes sense. And bi-weekly breakfast, very smart. I love that. More people need to do that with their
Yeah,
teams.
yeah, it's a great way to, so it doesn't feel like a meeting, because
Yeah.
you're just sitting around eating breakfast, but you're obviously discussing topics. But it's something that the guys look forward to instead of like, oh, we got to go into the conference room and and all, here's the agenda. These
Yeah.
are 50, 60-year-old guys that hate corporate America. They don't want bureaucracy. They don't want, they don't want an Asana task. They don't,
Yeah.
they don't know what Notion is. They just want a list, a handwritten list. Here's the things to do, and we'll discuss it over a breakfast burrito.
Oh, I love that. How long did it take, when you first took over that one and I guess the subsequent ones to really, I guess I don't know if turn them around is the right word, but really implement some new procedures.
We're still working on culture. I mean, that's it's been 2 years now, and we got to talk about culture every time about how to treat customers and how we um the little policy things that come up, and well, what do we do when when a lady's screaming at me about something, and like, how do I diffuse that situation? Do I just go run and hide in the office, or do you call the cops, or do you try to you just throw some quarters at her and tell her to go away? We're just working at that every day. So it's just something that you sort of organically develop. There's no, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people try to systematize culture, and it's on some level you can do that, but you've got to realize you're dealing with humans. And I mean, if I told these guys that we're developing culture, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about?
I could
This is a car
imagine.
wash, right? You can't use buzzwords and stuff with these guys. You got to talk like real people. So it's just something that sort of organically grows, I think, if you feed it right.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And what did you look for, when you were doing more like financial diligence on these car washes? Each time you're looking at a deal, is that a big component of?
Yeah, it definitely is. I like to use the triangulation method. So, like when you're looking at finances, I'd like to have three sources. So I want to look, and this is good for any when you're buying any company, but so generally you have some sort of accounting software, usually QuickBooks, and then you've got bank statements, and then there's usually some sort of point of sale system, right? If you've got, maybe it's Shopify, or in the car wash case, there's car wash software. So you've got these three things. So if all those three things make sense and the numbers are close to each other, then you've triangulated it, right? And then you can do that with a lot of different things. You can do that with like there's a ton of cash in car washes, so you need to do
That was going to
that.
be my next question. How do you
Yeah,
deal with
yeah,
that?
yeah. So there's a point of sale system that tells you how much cash you're bringing in and how much the guys should be depositing every week. And so they know they have to submit the receipts to us, and we will verify it with that point of sale system. And if it's way, way off, they know they're going to get called to the carpet and say what's going on here. The only time it really happens that it's way, way off is because when you pull a bunch of quarters out of a bay, you have to reset the counter, right?
Hmm.
If they don't reset the counter, then the next week, it looks like there should be all this money, and then when there's not. Well, with our tracking system, we can actually see, and I can say, did you forget to reset the counter in bay one? And he says, oh, I might. And we can kind of look at that and say, well, if we tweak the spreadsheet this way, then the count is right. So there's ways to double check everything. So we also do what I like to call the input and the output. Um, so when you're looking at a building, especially, or say if anything with physical plant, you look at the inputs. The inputs for us are water, electricity, gas, and that's it. So you follow the water through the whole system. Where is it going? It's going to the water heater, blah, 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 blah. Where does it go out? It goes out through the sewer line. So you kind of look at all those things, right? You follow the gas and you follow the electricity the same way. There's also companies that will come out and do a complete due diligence for you on a car wash. They do nothing but work on car washes, and they can go
Wow.
through, and yeah, it's very helpful. Like when we're buying these new ones, we're going to lean on one heavily, because we won't have any employees when we buy these two. We're going to have to hire people for this one. So there's a car wash service company that works heavily on these two car washes. They're going to come in and train us how these car washes work, and then we'll train our people. So it'll be a little different scenario on those, but a new car wash owner would lean heavily on those kind of service providers.
That's super interesting. They help you run the diligence and train you to sort of through that transition period as well.
Exactly,
That's
because all they do is fix car washes all day, and
love
they
that.
generally provide the chemicals too, so they can look at a car wash and say, okay, you need to change out the polish and the pre-soak, whatever it is, and they can come in and help your car wash run much better.
And can you engage them before, like, I guess once you're under LOI, can you engage them to actually like
Yeah. In general, though, it's much cheaper to have an attendant who's mechanically inclined to fix the little stuff, and then you let the car wash service company come in and fix the big problems.
mm,
So they look complicated, car washes do, but the ones we buy are simple enough that somebody who's familiar with a wrench can fix 3/4 of the problems.
got it. And are these companies that are helping, are they also helping with the marketing, or is that you guys? It's more
No,
so fixing it
they're
up and
all
making, yeah,
yeah, they're all back end stuff. So they're all the mechanicals and the chemicals.
got it. So they're not like reviewing financials with you of the
No,
deal.
no,
Okay.
they'll just review the machinery, and they'll tell you, because that's what most acquirers need help with, right? They can look at a P&L,
Yeah.
but they can't look at a pump stand and say, yeah, this looks good. I have no idea. I
Yeah.
still don't know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at a pump stand and a car wash mechanic. It's like, well, it's not dripping oil everywhere, so I think it's fine, but what they're looking at to say for sure.
No, that's interesting. And now that you're, actually operating a couple of these, what's your day-to-day role look like? You have people, you have staff there. What are you
Mhm.
focused on? What does your time commitment look like?
Yeah, it's only about 5 hours a week when we're running. When I'm buying some, you're looking through the due diligence documents, and then you're talking to the bank, you're talking to the seller, you're talking to the brokers. So that right now we're under contract for two. That's about 20 hours a week, mostly giving the bank what they need because we're going through SBA, and the SBA wants everything from all the businesses you own. And so that's a constant paperwork flow. But yeah, normally if we just had the three car washes and we weren't doing anything much, my partner spends probably 5 hours a week answering calls from the attendants on mechanical issues or order supplying, um, ordering supplies, what I'm trying to say. And then for me, it's 5 hours. I spend a little bit on maintaining our AdWords ads. That's probably 20 minutes a week. I look at our financials weekly. Um, and then we have this biweekly breakfast. So it's really low commitment, ongoing.
And I guess speaking of AdWords, is, paid marketing a key driver of growth here, or is it just something you
Yeah.
need?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
it is.
you can advertise on Google Maps, and we can get somebody to ask for directions to our car washes for about $6 or $7. So that's a very high leverage point. There's a lot of AdWords that just doesn't work for, like if I have a friend who's got a plumbing company and he's paying $135 a click.
Wow.
So it doesn't work, right? But for us, we can get somebody on the lot for somewhere between $6 and $9. That's worth it.
Yeah,
Especially
especially if they buy a membership.
especially if they buy a membership. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That's fascinating. And is there a ton of, I mean, you run an e-commerce business too. I'm sure it's way less competitive running paid marketing for the car washes, I'm guessing, than it is.
Yeah, because self-serve car wash guys just don't advertise. Like they don't know what it is. They don't understand it. And I know like sophisticated operators who don't do it. They think that your real estate is your advertising. And so if you can do a little bit, we've also done some direct mail. That's done okay. And we're going to refine that program. But yeah, if you have a marketing mind, you can find ways to market this thing.
Fascinating. No,
Yeah.
that's super interesting. Speaking of the SBA loan, you mentioned, I guess, how did you finance the first couple transactions? Was it SBA? You bought the real
The first
estate as
one were
well.
the first one were conventional bank loans. We put down 25% on the first one, 20% on the next two. This one will put down somewhere between 10 and 15% with the SBA. And banks love cash flowing businesses with lots of assets, and that's what these are.
And what made you decide to go SBA versus conventional bank loan this time around?
Because the deal size is such, it's 4.4 million, and you have a $5 million cap with the SBA on that's the 504 program we're going through, which is specifically made for real estate. And it made sense. It's the same amount of work whether you're borrowing $500,000 from the SBA or 5 million. So you might as well go for the big deal with the SBA if you can, because it's so much work, it's so much paperwork that I wouldn't even bother for $500,000. I would try to do it for a bigger deal. So we decided to do the SBA on this one, sort of max out our SBA hand here.
And with the conventional bank loans, were the terms better or faster to close? I'm guessing it was less paperwork for you guys, or
The conventional is
about?
far less underwriting. With the SBA, you can have up to 3 different entities underwriting it. With the bank, it's one. And so it was much easier with just conventional lending. Yeah.
And how long did it take for you guys to actually secure that or close the deal on those conventional?
On the conventional, we closed those in 60 days. The SBA, I'm guessing, probably end up being about 90.
Yeah.
Not longer.
Interesting. No, that
I got
makes a
time
lot
for
of sense.
one more question, Helen. Sorry, I gotta sit.
No, this has been great. Look, I think pretty much, covered mostly everything I wanted to ask you today, but, any final words of wisdom, especially for those, first-time business buyers out there, as well as, if people want to reach out to you, where could they find you?
Yeah, reach out to me on Twitter is mainly where I interact. You can search on Twitter/X for Car Wash Guy. You'll see my face with a yellow background. It's Kriss Berg tweets is the actual handle. I'm sure you'll link to that. So, any advice? After doing this for so long, I'm a huge believer in entrepreneurship, and I love the idea of people buying their first business. I would say if you feel the burning desire to do it, to be an entrepreneur, then to just do it, and don't get too caught up in the what in the beginning, because a lot of people have been convinced that they have to follow a passion, that they have to be passionate about their business. The odds that you're going to find a highly profitable business that you can run that you're really passionate about on your first go around are really low. It should be something you like and something you enjoy. Hopefully you enjoy the employees, you enjoy the customers, and you enjoy the product, but you don't have to be super passionate about it. Eventually you're going to develop a passion for being an entrepreneur. And I don't have a passion for cleaning cars. I have a passion for buying rundown properties and improving the operations. I have a passion for business, period. So the what doesn't matter so much to me as the how. And so I would encourage other people to think the same way. You're not going to find, the reason there are 10,000 flower shops in your town and 5,000 bike shops in your town is because those people are passionate about flowers and bikes, right? And there's so much competition that nobody's making any money. If you can find a niche where there's not so many passionate players, but there's people who are good at business and can understand how to market it and hire, build teams and that kind of thing, you can make a lot of money, and you will find yourself very passionate about entrepreneurship in general.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, and I definitely feel the same way. So, no, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Kriss. This has been great. Really enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will too. So Thank you
too.
again, and let's stay in touch.
Okay, thanks, Ellen.